that we all exist within. Knowledge is power.
Sorry, it's just that I want to make double sure that we have this whole
Yeah.
conversation. Sorry for the noise.
Okay, no problem. Knowledge is power. The act of presenting yourself to the existence of the magnetic field allows you to interact with it, impact it, manipulate it in a good way. When you know that everything is energy, you need simply tune yourself to new energy to change your reality. Move in the direction of what feels good. Ask questions that open up space on the path before you. Be the seeker of greater possibilities. So when you speak to the womb, you're actually creating this oneness with this magnetic field, and possibilities are there. I mean, if you're a new parent and you don't, and as a father, you sometimes get to a point where you feel like you're the outsider, but you're really not. Energetically, you're the connection of that. And what would it be like for fathers to know that they actually could manipulate the energy so that everything around their partner and the child has a oneness of calmness, a peace that's created because they're willing to facilitate that energy through the womb. And when I say speaking to the womb is more than just speaking to the womb. It's actually being a oneness with the person that you're having the child. And it's just being a connective energy.
I love it. And it's actually so like now as you were talking about the dad's feeling a little bit like outsider in this conversation, because of course the baby is forming inside the mom's body. So, you know, you kind of maybe wish you were there as well to just, I don't know, contribute.
But the question is, can you be there? I mean, there's a lot of tools on planet Earth. And I used to think things were, I'm beginning to realize that after I've had a couple of conversations with Gary Douglas, there's nothing that cannot be done and created once you think it. Once you create.
Sorry.
So here, this is the piece that I challenge fathers with. Yes, you cannot have and hold the baby in your body this lifetime. No. But can you participate energetically? Like, okay, I do this thing called SOP.
Mm-hmm.
And when I'm doing SOP session, I really have no words to describe the symphony of possibilities which Dane here created. So I don't have any words to describe that, but it's a connection to bodies that I get excited doing them because I remember when my kid's mom was pregnant, it's the first time I really tapped into that energy. Mm. Because as a male, sometimes you might be like, I wish I could, like you said, I wish I could do that, but you can't do it physically, but you can do it energetically.
Yeah. Sorry, I was just thinking like the phenomenal invitation that you be for the baby and for your partner to receive, like from the baby to receive, you know, beyond the body, it is being formed within. So it's just like be like, hey, you can receive from anyone and everyone, and I'm here. And there is also this, you know, there is this intent of nurturing that that really, I don't know, I just get how much it nurture into existence the being that is being born. When you're like, hey, I cannot, you know, touch you with my organs, you know, and that's it. But I'm being here, I'm like whispering possibilities and in a way like wishing well, but it's not just the polarity of wishing well or wishing bad, but like I am here with the willingness to expose you to anything that will contribute to you.
Yes.
And I'm actually, you know, like I'm actually waiting for you, and whatever you choose, I'm gonna be here.
Yeah.
Which I don't know, it's a silly thing, but the other day we have a dog, and it's a completely different, you know, field. But I was, my kid were saying that we might have a dog for some period of time, so our dog would be like, I don't know, our 15 years of having the experience with our dog, but for the dog it would be his whole life to deal with us in a way, you know,
right.
Be exposed to us. And you're actually, yeah, I don't know, I mean, I don't know where I want to go with that, but I love that you acknowledge how you knew the SOP energy, the Symphony of Possibilities energy, which is really a reconnection and an invitation and a space and an empowering, without many words, really. That,
Yeah. So here's an example, another example. We just got done with Maestro class, which was being done in Rome. And I did it from here in the northwest part of the US. The closest person that I did a session with was in Canada. But yet there was a reaction from a distance on screen. And I sit there and I think about, if I can have an experience with somebody on screen, I sure can have an experience with that baby in womb that's right next to me. And but the issue with it is you have to get out of the way we think, because energy doesn't follow any of those rules.
Yeah.
So what if you start speaking magic to the person holding the baby in their body and to the being in the body, so that more miraculous shit starts to happen for them before the baby even steps out?
Yeah. Well,
it's that energy.
I love the you were mentioning like magic and miracles, because really, I mean, although it's scientifically, analyzed and everything, the process of growing a baby, as a father or a mother doesn't care much, has so many elements of inexplicable miracles, magic, awe, surprise, and like, willingness to be surprised and to allow everything in as well. Because I don't know, I mean, I also, even for the hormonal weirdness that people go through, because it's also, normal, let's say, or scientifically justified, but there is this willingness to be surprised and to have anything come to you with ease and joy and glory and be like, oh, okay, where do we go from here? How does it get even better? So you just start asking questions also about like, what do you know and what will work, which is not something we're invited to in our daily lives. It's more like, get the right answer, go on that, down that road. Not many questions.
And this whole concept of speaking to the womb, to me, is giving you permission to play with the unknown, because we've been trained in most of our educational, like, for example, here's the miracle for what I tell each one of my children. So 1 million sperm were ejaculated. One of those sperm made it to the egg. That's a miracle. If you were fishing, like I lived off the Columbia River, and the chance of a fish making it to the hatching place where they're born and dropping eggs, you can be eaten by another predator, you be caught by humans, all these things. The miracle of getting there, the same thing is the miracle of us being. If we just sit back and just hold it, even if you're born into a fucked up scenario, excuse my language, if you're born into that scenario, the miracle of getting there surpasses anything else you're going to meet. And if you tap into that magic, then you start to have, and if the parents could tap into that magic, then they can actually start playing with that magic, and the miracle of that child is manifest from the first breath, and they start being the miracle. Because the system is not going to tell them that they're the miracle, but if you start playing with this energy of being miraculous, oh my God, what would be created? And I know some people probably listen to this and hear this and they be like, well, what the hell? I'm like, it's like being a little kid the first time they see snow. It's like, what is this? Or what I really enjoy about the holidays is, I'm not really big in holidays as such, but spending time with my children and remembering my kids were small and seeing smaller kids, and the approach of this holiday, this energy is like heightened for them. It's that imaginary energy of something is about to occur or happen, but I don't know what it is. So I get really excited about that.
I love it. I can totally see you with like, little child being like, waiting for, I don't know if it's Santa or the snow or whatever it is, like really this epiphany of what's coming next. How does it get
Right.
even better? Like this curiosity and enthusiasm and just like willingness to play without much of thought in it. It's more
Yeah.
like I'm here. And it's also I guess a little bit when Gary Douglas talked about the difference between being prepared and aware. Aware requires you only to be present. Prepare,
Yeah.
you kind of have to map out the future that you kind of statistically imagine more possible to happen rather than being in the fields of possibility. You're more in the fields of like predictability and be like, okay, so what's gonna happen? And you just like, I don't know, carry your backpack with the tools that you need for whatever the occurrence will be. And with kids, you cannot do that. I always, when my friends have kids, I always, I don't know, send them a message or something, and it always said like, "Welcome to the jungle," like the Guns N' Roses song, because I love
Yeah.
Guns N'
Yeah.
Roses.
Yeah.
But it's just like, only rule, no rule, because then it happened. And I love that, pregnancy and this relationship changing conversation links us to parenting and the whole word of dealing with the rest of the world that tells you so vehemently what's right and what's wrong, and where you are all the time in the equation. But like it is such a gift to be able to connect with a being and like acknowledge the miracle they be, and in a way start to make it more available for them to access as a being.
And here's the piece with that. You only really can do that if you're willing to acknowledge that in you first. I'm at work. I'm in my building here. This is where I work with I work with the juvenile department in the States. And today is the day before Thanksgiving, which is the US holiday tomorrow. And somebody said, why would you have appointments with young people the day before this holiday? Because what if we can come together and we don't get caught? What if I'm the spark for a young person struggling, and I could be something, they can see a glimpse of another possibility, which is miraculous to them. So why not do it during this time of the year?
Yeah.
Why not do it the day before a holiday? Because tapping into that same energy. And that's the thing about what I was speaking to the womb. The womb is also earth. So when you speak to the womb of your partner, would you be willing to speak to the womb of earth and all that it delivers?
Can I ask you a question regarding your work, John?
Yes.
I know about everything that you do and be with, well, not everything. I wish I knew more actually, with young people. And I wonder how much this empowering conversation, I'm not going to talk about parenting, but this empowering conversation happens daily for you in working with young people, and not necessarily from the structure of being a father to them or anything like this, because it's probably not as relevant, but like how it is, but because you're really speaking to the womb in your daily job. You're like you were saying right now, it's just like, why not be there for them now? What if now is the moment? There could be really this spark of what else is possible in them. I'll be there, I'll show up for that. So I just wanted to ask you if there is any connection point that you see between like parenting and what you do in a way daily as a work.
So one of the things that I let go of, and it's a practice, I think a lot of times is I didn't have children until I had been working with young people for like maybe 6 to 7 years before I had my first child. Okay. And I didn't have and while I had my first child, as they were growing up, I was already working with teenagers. Yeah. So by the time my first daughter was born in 92, I started this job in 90. By the time she was a teenager, I had worked with over 100 teenagers and middle school kids in this program. And so at the same time, I think it's the approach of being in awe or the magic of what's at hand. I think a lot of times people try to be controlling, and I'm just not that. I mean, I sometimes think I fucked up my kids because I did not control, I didn't care about grades. I cared about them learning, but I didn't care about the grades.
Well, yeah.
And in this work, when a kid comes in and whatever allegation or crime they come in, that's not important to me. What's important is that they realize that that was just an experience and there's other possibilities ahead. They're not dead yet. They're sitting in front of me, something, even if they might have to go to jail, they're not, that's not the end of the road. And I think that for me in working with kids, I think it's, I've always loved the concept of magic when I was a little kid, and I'm willing to continue to be magical with everybody that I meet. And so I think that's the difference in the work that I have, is because I'm very playful. I'm 59 and I'm very playful. I'm not like, I don't have a stick up my ass like I walk around like, I'm like, it's like, what?
Yeah.
You know, and here's the piece about it, being willing to be weird.
You know, it's funny. There was at one point many years ago, I was in Texas with my partner, and I was completely like mind bogged by the idea of looking normal and like being weird and looking normal. I was like, how do I look normal? And then he was like, let's have breakfast and then you'll see. And I was like, no, I really don't know how to do that. You know, it was something that was striking me as like a big conundrum to put together in a way. But like, what the heck? Like you're working with an institution that is usually, and I had my fair share. I also have 3 kids and they're homeschooled. So it's way easier now, but like, you work with an institution. So you do have, I mean, the institution kind of requires you to put up a normal face to give, you know, report or all kind of things. And then your willingness to play with that, but not buy into that. So just, you know, act normal, but be weird. Man, like, how much are you tapping into the possibilities and you're not wrong energy in the kids and be like, hey, I look like an adult. I don't know, I have a driving license and all of it. But what else is possible? What would be playful, fun, and joyful for you?
So, sister, yesterday I had a young man that I supervised, and I thought it was like a year ago that I was working with this young man, and he asked to meet with me. And I was like, well, you know, I'm tired. He said, oh, can we get together for some coffee or something to eat? And I was like, sure. So I went and I met with this kid, and he was such off the spectrum type of kid. I mean, I forgot who he was. And at the very end of our dinner, he was just like smiling, said, man, Mr. Ashford, this really made my evening. And I was sitting there when I got in my car, sat in my car before I started the car up, I was like, what the fuck just happened? I was just like, I sat with this person and I realized that when you're willing not to be energy of judgment, people can be themselves. And people are seeking out other people on the planet that they can be themselves with. And I think that in this work that I always done, I mean, I don't care what the fuck you do. I have a capacity that I can see people at their greatest. Now, in the past, that has backfired on me, but still, I've now learned how to work with this capacity. And when you're working with a capacity and you see somebody, and you have to be a little weird yourself. For me, after the kid left, I was like, well, how am I like this kid? How does he see me being like him? Whereas I never saw myself being like that until after. So I was like, it was a weird conversation. And what the weirdness of it is because it was more energetically. And he was sharing stuff about a new girlfriend, about a job, about things he wanted to create. And he was just willing to be a space. But there was not very many words spoken. And that takes me back to going back to speaking to the womb. It's not just the womb of somebody pregnant. It's also the womb of the partner that you have, of the possibility. So what happens is you start off talking like you're speaking to a baby, and after maybe after you finish having, you have 3 kids and you're done. How does your partner speak to the womb of you that actually feeds him too? It's the oneness. It's the oneness of that.
You know, I would, when you're talking about that, I wonder how many like fertile possibilities are around us that we don't even acknowledge. And this talking to the womb, really, I'm a big plant fan. I do plant and grow anything. I always have seeds in my pocket and stuff like this. Um, like what would it take for us to be willing to see how we can interact with anything and everything so that it can grow, so that it can evolve, change. And as you were saying, it doesn't matter if, you know, a kid choose to go to jail as a part of his experience on this planet, but more like, what if there is nothing sterile about anything and anytime? Because we're bombarded by news that tell us how fuck up our world is, and there's a war and there's this and there's a crisis and it's only going to get worse than everything. But like us buying into that is creating that.
Yes.
Whereas, you know, being a little bit more like, yeah, but what will work? And I was, you know, plant wise, I was looking at how many plants grow in super harsh condition. And actually the other day I've been reading a whole thing about a bacteria. It's called extremophile. So there are some bacteria that thrive, not only live, but thrive under extreme conditions, meaning like super high pressure, like, you know, the Mariana Trench, like in the ocean, or like extremely dry or extremely, and they thrive. So, so it's something that if you put a seed or an animal, a complex organism there, it wouldn't possibly grow and expand. But like, there are elements of, well, resilience, but also like prosperity and ease that we haven't maybe not been trained very much to see and seek and acknowledge. So
it's just switching your perspective, and I think that's it. Are you willing to be flexible? And I think a lot of times, like, and for me, it's just like the whole concept of, like I was saying, speaking to the womb. It's like you have to be willing. You have to really be willing not to have to be like everybody else. And you have to be willing to be like, I don't know what this is, but, and be okay with, you have to be willing to be with energy. That's it. Yeah. And once you're really willing with energy, then you start to play with it. It's playful. So even parenting, so many people try to get parenting right, and they worried about what people say for kids. And I noticed that because one time it was kind of funny. I was coming to some class. I think I was going to Houston, and then I got on the airplane, and I got on the plane first, and I got a seat, and I said, I know no little kids, so no mom's gonna sit there with a bunch of little kids. And sure enough, I get on the plane, and a mom sits behind me with 3 kids, and I was like, fuck, you know. And so sure enough, during part of the flight, the kids start seeing my energy. So I saw this little hand came between the seat, and the mom said no. After a while, I sat back and I started playing with the kid, and I was just like, I think that things changed. It wasn't as bad of a trip if you're willing to play with the energy of something. So the kids did not cry a lot. It was like relaxed, and the mom was like relaxed when I didn't like get reactive to her with her children. And I think that it's the same way of like what I say, speaking to the womb. You don't know what's going on inside, but you do know when you lower your barriers and play with the energy, like, oh, this is calming. Yeah. And the baby's just like, I'm in a box with you guys. There's little air in this box. My ears are bothering me. So what energy can I be with that baby to shift that? So it's more ease for that person. And the same thing, like I was trying to say with the whole thing of the womb, I think that a lot of times, even when you said earlier, like the hormones going on with the woman as she's changing, the baby's being developed. What if men were willing to be part of that process energetically? Because here's the piece why I say that. In Access, there's a body process called biomimetic memory of energy. And you do that. And if you do that in a negative, why can't you do it in a positive? Like feel that energy and like, but not be the effect of it, but bring the magic into it.
Yeah.
So
that's the huge difference between inspiring or making anything bigger than you. It's like, I'm here and there are those things that I have available, and if you want them, get them. And I actually, I don't know, I love that you're saying the not need to speak conversation. I often, when I teach body processes class, etc., I often remind people that we are mammals, that we are animals of consciousness. And because I think that we often forget, and we might have been trained or have been exposed to a lot of people going through their mind, cognitive, logical processes, even just the way my kids, the younger one is doing, like in Italy, we do a lot of text analysis. So it's beginning, development, and end. And it's this process that repeats over and over again until you die. It's like, that's how it goes, you know? And so what if you did, like, you could, you know, follow the step, but what if you had completely different options available to you that are not mapped or mappable out for what you know, for what matters? And what if and really our communication, it's so much more, like the verbal communication is such a minuscule spectrum of what is available. And but it really takes trusting your knowing there, because as you were saying, I'm a little alien in this box, and you cannot be sure, you cannot have any counter proof that this being is listening to you or that you are listening to it. But heck, why not? You know, why wouldn't you give yourself a chance to be magic and miraculous if you can?
It's like this. I was telling my wife, Tori and I were talking, and a friend of ours had a picture. And as soon as I saw the picture on Facebook, I was like, oh my God, she has a walk-in. Now, for people who not understand what a walk-in is like this entity, this energy, this with this being. In the past, I would have made myself wrong for noticing something like that, and I would shut it down. Now I play with the energy. Now that I notice, I don't need to do anything for that person or change that person or ask me questions or facilitate. I don't need to do anything. But what is happening for me, because I'm willing to be this energy now, I'm just able to observe and be aware of so much more. But I'm finally getting to the point that because I'm aware of something doesn't mean I need to run and fix it. Like the baby behind me in the plane. I didn't need to do anything. I just needed to expand my energy and be like, oh, okay, you're there. I'm here.
Yeah. Well, and what a freaking gift that is also with the kids that you work with, because the need to fix is imperative in a society that kind of would rather control you than empower you a bit.
Yes.
Because if you're a good citizen, then you do X, Y, and Z. Maybe possibly B, but definitely not C. So it is also approaching kids that are, you know, dysfunctional for the parameters of this reality is, you know,
I like those kids.
Yeah.
I like those kids.
People have been trying to do all over again. And instead of being like, okay, who are you? And what will work? And also, like, I often think at kids, like, and I often think of myself really, but like as an alien that landed on this planet, and what would it take to be able to give people the instruction manual of how it works on this planet and what you need to fake, even though it doesn't, if it's not necessarily true for you. I was looking at my kids, one of my kids had to do a homework some years ago, and it was about like good qualities and bad qualities. It was about describing himself. And he was completely stuck. He was like, I know selfish is bad, But what if you never put you in the equation and then you give up you and your life and anything to please the other, or because this is what they teach us? And I was like, it's actually and it was a great topic. We were like, oh, it's interesting that how polarized is everything, where really it's not necessarily that, maybe actually being selfish is something that saves you from disappearing completely from your life and making anything and anyone bigger than you. So yeah, I just what a gift it is to not fix anyone, but just be willing to be present, to listen, and to ask, is there anything that I can contribute to you, and if so, what it is.
And I think as a father, as you said that story, my son, who I have 3 alien children, I call them, that biologically belong to me. I have a few more that aren't biologically connected to me, but my son, I remember when he was maybe like in kindergarten or maybe first grade or second grade, maybe it was first grade. He went to school and they had these blocks where there were different sizes and colors. And they asked him to group them as like groups. And what my son did is he put a black one with a blue one, a green one, and he had 3 different sets, exactly like that. And I laughed at him being such a young age of thinking outside the box, because he got in trouble in class because he refused to put the blacks with the blacks, the blues with the blues, the greens with the greens, because he said they do fit together. This one's the same size as that one over there, but it's an order. And the issue with it is, that was very inspirational to hear my son tell me. He didn't tell me this story to what really happened until years later, but it made me even tap more into that energy of like, when I'm working with kids and children, I'm willing to be an energy. And like, I'm sitting in my office and I'll get the phone, my office phone would ring, and I will know that the kid and the mom is in the lobby, and I'll expand out and I'll tap into the energy, and I will shift my energy so that it will be more ease for this family coming in. I just want you to feel that. I want you to understand the power that we are, that at any time, and that's what I was talking about, the SOP. That's why, like, I know that there's some magic of speaking to the womb that would change every child from this point forward, if people would be willing to practice that. Even the moms practicing speaking to their own womb.
Yeah, really.
And it's not words to take it out. So not when I say speak, it's an energetic process. It's not words. Matter of fact, play with it without words and see what you create.
Oh man, I love you. Thank you so much. This invitation of like intimacy with possibilities, and include ourselves in the possibilities as well, because people seem to try to find it outside of themselves all the time, but like also talking to your womb, what what else is possible there. Wow, John, thank you so much.
Thank you, sister.
Thank you so much for being on board, really.
Thank you so much for having me. It was fun.
And I will put all the details of John in the comment and then in the playlist as well. So if you'd like to know more and just play some magic, you
come check me out.
Exactly. Come check him out. Yes. Thank you so much, John, and thank you so much, everyone, for being on. Have a phenomenal evening. Bye.
Peace.